Hey guys, my name is Matsumo, and recently we have learned about some pretty disappointing news surrounding Modern Warfare. This last weekend was the beta, and I had a lot of fun with it. I was going to talk about what I enjoyed from the beta, what I thought could see some improvements, and we'll still talk about that here in a second, but then we learned about some details that were a bit disheartening. So when the game releases, it's going to have a mode called Spec Ops Survival. It's essentially a horde mode where you have to go against increasingly difficult waves of enemies and you try to survive for as long as you can. The thing is, though, is that it is going to be a timed exclusive available on PlayStation 4 first. Now, timed exclusives really aren't new to the Call of Duty franchise, and it kind of comes with the territory. This is the way that the past Call of Duties have worked. Usually they get their content first there, but the thing about this timed exclusive is that it's for an entire year. The thing about the Call of Duty franchise is that it comes out annually, and so for those PC and Xbox players that wanted to enjoy this content with their friends, or they wanted to matchmake with other people, all those players are now playing the new Call of Duty by that point, and so this content basically becomes irrelevant. And so obviously, this has left a sour taste in players' mouths. Now, they have come out and said to try to reassure the player base that this is only going to be about 1% of the content available in the next Call of Duty, and everything else is not going to be timed exclusive, which is nice to hear, but it's also the principle of the thing. If this was a week or a month timed exclusive, I think that would still sting, but it would seem much more reasonable. The fact that it's not going to be available for an entire year on an annual video game, that's where people are kind of drawing the line. Now, sadly, that wasn't the most disappointing news that we learned this week. Not too long ago, it was revealed that there is potentially going to be loot boxes in the next Call of Duty. For many, this probably isn't that much of a surprise. Loot boxes have become more and more popular in basically every video game out there. Apex Legends, Rainbow Six Siege, you name it, every big video game out there now has these kinds of mechanics. The thing is, though, is that for most of these games, it's purely cosmetic. Apparently, that's not going to be the case for Modern Warfare. This is a leak, it is a rumor, so take it with a grain of salt, but you're going to be able to unlock new weapons with these loot boxes. You might think to yourself, there's no way that they would do that. An RNG system to actually obtain new weapons in the game? Isn't that essentially an RNG way to buy power? It absolutely is. The thing about it, though, is that this is something that they've done in past Call of Duty games. It is worth noting that Infinity Ward has come out and said basically to ignore these rumors, and that these rumors were started by someone who was just trying to make a name for themselves, basically saying that these rumors are false. And I really hope that they do, because this would be an awful direction for the game. Call of Duty has been known lately to release and then a couple of months later, after the reviews are in, to basically pump it full of microtransactions. They've done this for the last couple of titles, and people are hoping that that's not going to be the case here as well. And so all I can say is that I really do hope that this leak is misinformed and that this isn't something that we're going to see. If you're going to have loot boxes, even though I'm not a big fan of that kind of system, they need to be purely cosmetic. If you're going to be adding in new weapons and updating the game later, well, I fully understand that you need to support the developers. They need to make money because at the end of the day, this is a business, and I fully understand that, but having it be in an RNG system that is clearly not consumer friendly and it's meant to just nickel and dime people to the very end, that's where I and a lot of people are drawing the line, and we're really hoping that is not going to be the case in the next COD. All that being said, I think the reason why many people are disappointed by this news, and hopefully it's not true, is that this beta was an incredible amount of fun. This feels like, for many people, the COD that they've been waiting for. One thing that I loved about it is the incredible amount of customization and the way it allows you to change your playstyle significantly. I will admit, when I first learned about this customization, I thought it was too good to be true. Basically, every COD or FPS game out there has said something along these lines. Customize the game to your liking, change your playstyle, but a lot of them fall short, and a lot of that customization doesn't have that much impact on the game. But when you really kind of delve into it, and I think this is kind of just more of a surface level at this point, I believe there's even going to be more attachments when the game releases, you really can change the way that these weapons perform. I think the best example of this is the Odin. weapon. When you unlocked it, it was pretty good at taking people out at medium to close distance because of its high damage. You could play aggressive, you could get on those objectives, and as long as you had the accuracy, you could take anyone out that you came across. But as soon as things got a bit further than that, if you're playing on ground war and you were trying to take people out at a distance, that's where it started to struggle a bit more because it had a significant amount of recoil. You'd be better off using some other options. But as soon as you started to apply some of those attachments, that's where you could essentially turn it into a sniper. A long-range scope, the bipod, and all of a sudden, this thing turns into a laser beam at those distances, but also maintains that high damage as well. The downside of it, though, is that you don't have a lot of maneuverability. It takes a long time to aim down sights, and on top of that, if you want to take full advantage of the accuracy, you're going to need to either be crouched or prone, which limits your maneuverability, making it difficult for you to run away if someone catches you by surprise. And so essentially, you need to hunker down, you need to lock down those long corridors if you want to use this loadout effectively. And so it essentially completely changes the playstyle of this weapon, which is exactly what I was looking for with this kinds of customization. We won't really know if that's true for every weapon in the game because we only scratched the surface here. We didn't have all the options available, but I really hope that that is the case. I can really see this being a reason for continuing to play and just adding in longevity because of all the variety that this is going to add, and I'm hopeful that that is true. One addition that was a bit divisive, though, is the addition of kill streaks in Ground War. This mode already was really chaotic. This is probably due in part because of the very map design. For some reason, Infinity Ward wanted to have 3 objectives directly in the center 10 feet away, and obviously everyone is going to congregate and be centralized there, which is going to add to said chaos. But on top of that, those 64 people running around can also call in kill streaks, which just kind of pushes things over the top. When you're constantly getting taken out by VTOLs, choppers, UAV spam the entire time so that you're always on the minimap, it gets pretty repetitive and exhausting and lessens that experience. And so a lot of people are hoping that either they limit the amount of streaks that you can call on in, only having a select few, maybe only UAV is available, counter UAV and stuff to that nature, or just outright remove them entirely. If you didn't have those kill streaks, I honestly think that the mode would probably play out a bit better, wouldn't be as frustrating for some players, and would probably make for a much more enjoyable experience. On the other hand, though, I will admit having some of these streaks available, I think added to the experience and had moments that I have not experienced in any other video game to date. I had moments where I was trying to play the objective, but there was a tank in the way, and it was basically forcing me to stay inside the entire time. Now, instead of just kind of tossing it up and being like, all right, I guess I can't do anything about it, I realized early on that I unlocked a cruise missile and that I could call it on in. Having the ability to essentially call in support like you would in real life. Now, I realize this is going to sound really cheesy, but it essentially allowed me to role play one of those moments where we're hunkered down, we're having a hard time because of one of these vehicles, and then I could take it out and allow my team to push on in. It was incredibly satisfying when that happened, and to have those moments removed entirely would be a bit disappointing. And so I'm really curious to see how they're going to be handling streaks when the game releases. Let me know what you guys think on this topic, though. Do you think that streaks deserve to be in Ground War? Do you think that they have no place? Give me your guys' thoughts down below in the comments. Now, one thing I do think that they need to improve upon, and we sort of touched on this earlier, especially for Ground War, is the map design itself. I don't understand why you need to have all 3 objectives directly in the center so close to each other. The map is actually quite large. There was a fair amount of playable space for you to run around in, but a majority of it was just randomly placed buildings that didn't really have any flow or meaning to the overall match itself. Why not have that D point pushed on over maybe towards the other side? Why does it need to be so close to every other objective? I don't want to go out and say that the map would have played better because maybe it wasn't. Maybe that really is the best spot for it with everything else related to it. But I really hope that for the other maps that are going to be available at launch, that they do try to spread things out and give people a bit of a breathing room. One thing that is a bit puzzling though is the addition of the mountainside. Because these maps aren't symmetrical, which I think by and large is a great thing. It makes the worlds feel much more organic and lived in, but because of this, one team was able to spawn in their base and literally walk up to that mountainside on their tank, or if they're wanting to play as a sniper, have a great line of sight of the entire map, but the other team doesn't have that same road to follow, making it much more difficult for them to get up there. And so from a map balance standpoint, it is essentially allows tanks and everything else on one end to have a massive advantage against everyone else. Now, I'm not opposed to having positions like this because I actually think it allows for side objectives. You're going to want to have these power positions that gives your team an advantage. It's not necessarily an actual objective that helps your team win in that respect, but if you're able to secure it for your team, it's going to make it easier for you to take the other objectives, which I actually think is a really cool design. But giving one side essentially a free route to it just seemed like a bizarre choice, and so hopefully they'll kind of take that into consideration. By and large, though, if you can't tell, I had an incredible amount of fun with the beta, and I cannot wait for the full release, especially for those larger modes. I think it's for this very reason why I and a lot of people are really crossed on fingers that those rumors about the loot boxes are unfounded. It's disappointing that there is the timed exclusive. I really wasn't looking forward to their survival mode, but having loot boxes with weapons in them is going to be incredibly disappointing if that's true, and I'm really hopeful that that is not the case, but we are gonna have to wait and see. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you guys experienced in the beta. Did you guys have a lot of fun? Were you disappointed? What would you guys like to see improved? Give me your guys' thoughts down below. But yeah, guys, until next time, have a good one and take it easy.